Good morning, boys and girls. I'm Eleanor Hawkins, and welcome to TELESTORY Time. I wonder how many of you visited your public library last week. Well, you know, now that school's out, this is a very good time to set aside a very certain time of day, a very special time of day, to do some reading, because we want you to continue to be just as good a reader as you were the last day of school. So talk with your parents about a very special day that they will take you to your library and where you can check out several good books to read, and then you can even use some of them at bedtime story hour. You can have your parents read to you and you read to them. So remind your parents today that you want a public library day each week to go to check out some very good books this summer. And now it's time for me to read to you. And our very first story this morning is entitled, The Tawny Scrawny Lion. Once there was a tawny, scrawny, hungry lion who never could get enough to eat. He chased monkeys on Monday, kangaroos on Tuesday, zebras on Wednesday, bears on Thursday, camels on Friday, and on Saturday, elephants. And since he caught everything he ran after, that lion should have been as fat as butter. But he wasn't at all. The more he ate, the scrawnier and hungrier he grew. The other animals didn't feel one bit safe. They stood at a distance and tried to talk things over with the tawny, scrawny lion. "It's all your fault for running away," he grumbled. "If I didn't have to run for every single bite I get, I'd be fat as butter and sleek as satin. Then I wouldn't have to eat so much, and you'd last longer." Just then a fat little rabbit came hopping through the forest picking berries. All the big animals looked at him and grinned slyly. "Rabbit," they said, "oh, you lucky rabbit. We appoint you to talk things over with the lion." Now that made the little rabbit feel very proud. "Well, what shall I talk about?" he asked eagerly. "Any old thing," said the big animals. "The important thing is to go right up close." So the fat little rabbit hopped right up to the big hungry lion and counted his ribs. "You look much too scrawny to talk things over," he said. "So how about supper at my house first?" "Well, now what's for supper?" asked the lion. The little rabbit said, "Carrot stew." Now that sounded awful to the lion. But the little rabbit said, "Yes, sir, my 5 fat sassy sisters and my 4 fat brothers are making a delicious big carrot stew right now." "Well, what are we waiting for?" cried the lion. And he went hopping away with the little rabbit, thinking of 10 fat rabbits and looking just as jolly as you please. "Well," grinned all the big animals, "that should take care of Tawny Scrawny for today." Before very long, the lion began to wonder if they would ever get to the rabbit's house. First, the fat little rabbit kept stopping to pick berries and mushrooms and all sorts of good-smelling herbs. And when his basket was full, what do you think he did? Well, he flopped down on the riverbank. "Wait a bit," he said. "I want to catch a few fish for the stew." That was almost too much for the hungry lion. For a moment he thought he would have to eat that one little rabbit then and there. But he kept saying, 5 fat sisters and 4 fat brothers, over and over to himself. And at last the 2 were on their way again. "Here we are," said the rabbit, hopping around a turn with the lion close behind him. Sure enough, there was the rabbit's house with a big pot of carrot stew bubbling over an open fire. And sure enough, there were 9 more fat, merry little rabbits hopping all around it. Now, when they saw the fish, they popped them into the stew, along with the mushrooms and herbs, and the stew began to smell very, very good indeed. And when they saw the tawny, scrawny lion, they gave him a big bowl of hot stew. And then they hopped about so busily that really it would have been quite a job for that tired, hungry lion to catch even one of them. So he gobbled his stew, but the rabbits filled his bowl again. And when he had eaten all he could hold, they heaped his bowl with berries. And when the berries were gone, the tawny, scrawny lion wasn't scrawny anymore. He felt so good and fat and comfortable that he couldn't even move. Now here's a fine thing, he said to himself. All these fat little rabbits, and I haven't room inside for even one. He looked at all those fine, fat little rabbits and wished that he were hungry again. Mind if I stay a while, he asked. We wouldn't even hear of you going, said the rabbits. Then they plumped themselves down in the lion's lap and they began to sing songs. And somehow, even when it wasn't time to say goodnight, that lion wasn't one bit hungry. Home he went through the soft moonlight. He was singing softly to himself. He curled up in his bed, patted his sleek, fat tummy, and smiled. When he woke up in the morning, it was Monday. Time to chase monkeys, said the lion. But he wasn't one bit hungry for monkeys. What he wanted was some more of that tasty carrot stew. So off he went to visit the rabbits. On Tuesday, he didn't want kangaroos. And on Wednesday, he didn't want zebras. He wasn't hungry for bears on Thursday, or camels on Friday, or even elephants on Saturday. All the big animals were so surprised and happy. They dressed in their best and went to see the fat little rabbit. Rabbit, they said, oh, you wonderful rabbit, what in the world did you talk to the tawny, scrawny, hungry, terrible lion about? The fat little rabbit jumped up in the air and said, oh my goodness, we had such a good time with that nice, jolly lion that I guess we forgot to talk about anything at all. And before the big animals could say one word, the tawny lion came skipping up the path. He had a basket of berries for the fat little rabbit sisters, and a string of fish for the fat rabbit brothers, and a big bunch of daisies for the fat rabbit himself. Oh, I came for supper, he said, shaking paws all around. Then he sat down in the soft grass, looking fat as butter, sleek as satin, and jolly as all get out, all ready for another big, big supper of carrot stew. And that, boys and girls, is the story of the tawny, scrawny lion. And now stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a moment to show you books from the shelves of your public library. Boys and girls, our bookshelf is made up of some very good books this morning. The very first one I want to show you is entitled The Random House Book of Fairy Tales. And inside we have, here is the story of the 12 Dancing Princesses. And then on over here is that wonderful story of Cinderella. Yes, this has many, many fairy tales in this Random House book of fairy tales. The next book I brought along is that old favorite of Black Beauty. And you know, this is a wonderful story, and it would be a wonderful book to be read at bedtime with your parents. You could read with them one chapter a night, and this could be lots of family fun, reading Black Beauty. Our next book is entitled Palace Bug, and this is a very good picture story. As you can see, all the way through, very easy reading and wonderful illustrations in The Palace Bug. Our next book is another picture story, and it's entitled The Man, the Boy, and the Donkey. And you can see inside. Here is a very good illustration, and all the way through with very little reading and lots of pictures. This book is entitled The Man, the Boy, and the Donkey. Our next book is a rather thick book, and it has animal stories, and that is the title. Inside you can see. Here is a story entitled The Boy Who Belonged to the Cat. All the way through, we have wonderful stories, and they're all animal stories. The last book that I want to show you from our bookshelf this morning is entitled Great Children's Stories. And all the way through, we have wonderful, wonderful stories. And you know, this book could take you through a whole week of reading at bedtime. Yes, all the way through, as you can see. Here is the story of Chicken Little, and most all of us know that. Yes, this is the book entitled Great Children's Stories. Boys and girls, any of these books can be checked out from any of the libraries in the Craven, Pamlico, Carteret Regional Library System. Be sure and use your library card this next week and check out some very good books. And now stay tuned, and we'll be back with another story in just a moment. And now, boys and girls, get very comfortable and ready to listen to the story of Tutu, the Little Fawn. Little Red Squirrel and some of his bird friends went to visit Tutu, the little fawn. "I hear Tutu is very sad," said Little Red Squirrel. "Maybe we can cheer him up." Now they found Tutu very sad indeed. "Well, what's the matter, Tutu?" asked Little Red Squirrel. "Why are you crying?" "Because my horns don't grow," Tutu told him. "Oh, well, be patient," said Little Red Squirrel. "Horns take a long time to grow." "Yes, be patient, Tutu," said all the birds together. "I have been patient, but it doesn't do a bit of good," Tutu said very sadly. Little Red Squirrel thought for a moment. "I know," he said. "We'll go and see some of your other friends. Maybe they will know how to make your horns grow." Little Red Squirrel jumped on Tutu's back, and off they went into the forest. Now soon they came upon a beetle who was sunning himself in the grass. "Good day, Beetle," said Tutu. "Oh, what beautiful horns you have. How can I make mine grow like yours?" "That's easy," said the beetle. "First you must learn to fly." "See," said the beetle, "like this." He spread his wings and flew into the air. Tutu tried to fly too, but he fell down and tumbled head over heels in the grass. "How silly you are," cried Little Red Squirrel. "Everyone knows that fawns can't fly." Mrs. Rabbit, who was watching, shook her head. "I never saw a fawn grow horns that way, she said. Flying won't help, Tutu. A little farther on, Tutu and Little Red Squirrel met a snail. Good day, Snail, said Tutu. What lovely horns you have. How did you make them grow so well? The rain made them grow, replied the snail. Yes, just sprinkle water on your head, Tutu, laughed Baby Fox, who had heard everything. Maybe that will make your horns grow. At that moment, a big black cloud passed over their heads, and it started to rain. Tutu was about to run under a tree out of the rain, but Little Red Squirrel stopped him. Now, the snail might be right, he said. Maybe water will make your horns grow. So Tutu stood in the rain and let it soak into his head. But soon the rain stopped. The sun came out. Little Red Squirrel ran to the brook and filled a nutshell with water, and then he sprinkled the water on Tutu's head. But nothing happened. Little Red Squirrel went on sprinkling and sprinkling, but still there was no sign of horns on Tutu's head. It's no use, sighed Little Red Squirrel. Water won't help. Maybe Porcupine can tell us just what to do. Hello, Porcupine, said Tutu. Please look at my head and tell me if you see any horns coming up. Oh dear, said Porcupine. I can't see anything except your head. Why don't you ask that nice Mrs. Cow what to do? Now, she has very fine horns. They found Mrs. Cow in the meadow. Good day, said Tutu. Please tell me how you made your horns grow. Mine won't grow, no matter what I do. Dear little Tutu, replied Mrs. Cow, you must learn to be patient. Only time will make your horns grow. When I was your age, I didn't have horns either, but I was patient and they grew all by themselves. Yours will too. You just wait and see. Tutu thanked Mrs. Cow. Yes, he thought, she is right. I must be patient. That night, Tutu rolled himself into a furry ball in his bed of soft green grass and went peacefully to sleep. He slept so soundly that not even the wind whistling around him woke him. An old owl flew by, hooting and flapping his wings, but Tutu slept on. He was dreaming of the day coming soon when he would have two beautiful horns on his head. The next day, Little Red Squirrel came by to visit Tutu, but Tutu said not a word about making his horns grow. So, thought Little Red Squirrel, Tutu has learned to be patient at last. Even Baby Fox, who came running out of the forest just then, knew that Tutu had learned to be patient. Baby Fox did not laugh at Tutu today. Then at last one day, there they were, two tiny little horns growing out of Tutu's head. Mrs. Cow was right. Patience made wondrous things happen. Tutu's friends came to see his new horns and wish him well. Porcupine, Baby Fox, Mrs. Rabbit and her family, and all the birds. And of course Little Red Squirrel, who said Tutu's horns were the loveliest he had ever seen. And that, boys and girls, is the story of Tutu the Little Fawn. And now stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a moment with another story just for you. And now from a book of fairy tales, I want to read you the story of the Teeny Tiny Woman. Once upon a time, there was a teeny tiny woman who lived in a teeny tiny house in a teeny tiny village. Now one day the teeny tiny woman put on her teeny tiny bonnet and went out of her teeny tiny house to take a teeny tiny walk. And when this teeny tiny woman had gone a teeny tiny way, she came to a teeny tiny gate. So the teeny tiny woman opened the teeny tiny gate and went into the teeny tiny churchyard. And when this teeny tiny woman had got into the teeny tiny churchyard, she saw a teeny tiny bone. And on the teeny tiny grave, the teeny tiny woman said to her teeny tiny self, "This teeny tiny bone will make some teeny tiny soup for my teeny tiny supper." So the teeny tiny woman put the teeny tiny bone into her teeny tiny pocket and went to her teeny tiny house. Now, when the teeny tiny woman got home to her teeny tiny house, she was a teeny tiny tired. So she went up her teeny tiny stairs to her teeny tiny bed. And she put the teeny tiny bone into a teeny tiny cupboard. And when this teeny tiny woman had been to sleep for a teeny tiny time, she was awakened by a teeny tiny voice from the teeny tiny cupboard which said, "Give me my bone." And this teeny tiny woman was a teeny tiny frightened. So she hid her teeny tiny head under the teeny tiny clothes and went to sleep again. And when she had been to sleep again, a teeny tiny time, the teeny tiny voice cried out from the teeny tiny cupboard, a teeny tiny louder, "Give me my bone." Now this made the teeny tiny woman a teeny tiny more frightened. So she hid her teeny tiny head a teeny tiny farther under the teeny tiny clothes. And when the teeny tiny woman had been to sleep again a teeny tiny time, the teeny tiny voice from the teeny tiny cupboard said again, a teeny tiny louder, "Give me my bone." And this teeny tiny woman was a teeny tiny bit more frightened, but she put her teeny tiny head out of the teeny tiny clothes and said in her loudest teeny tiny voice, "Take it." And that, boys and girls, is the story of the teeny tiny woman. And now I see I have time enough to read you this story that is entitled The Boy and the Wolf. Once upon a time there was a shepherd boy who was watching the sheep out on the hills. The day was long and he grew tired of being all alone. Oh, it would be fun, thought the boy, if wolves came and they attacked the sheep, and then everyone would come rushing out and there would be far more excitement around here. Then the idea came to the boy of shouting, "Wolf, wolf," and seeing just what would happen. So he stood up and waved his arms and shouted with all his might, "Wolf, wolf." The men in the village dropped what they were doing, snatched up axes and pitchforks, and came running as fast as they could. And when they reached the pasture, they called out, "Where is the wolf?" The boy laughed as hard as he could. Oh, it was only a joke. And so the men, grumbling, went back to the village. A few weeks went by and the boy tried his joke again, but only a few men came to the pasture this time. Then one day, boys and girls, a real wolf crept up among the sheep, and the boy ran toward the village shouting, "Wolf, wolf!" The men in the fields near the village heard him, but they smiled and paid no attention at all. "Wolf, wolf!" screamed the boy. The wolf was killing the sheep one after another, but there was nothing the boy could do. When the wolf had finished his meal, he crept away. Then the boy drove what was left of his flock back to the village. Oh, he was very sad indeed and ashamed, but he had learned his lesson. Those who lie are not believed, even when they tell the truth. And that, boys and girls, is the story of the shepherd boy and the wolf. And so now I see it's time for us to close our book of stories for this morning. Until next Saturday morning, this is Eleanor Hawkins saying bye-bye for TELESTORY Time.